Hello and welcome to the 2015 GFSI Leadership Series, brought to you by SafetyChain Software and Food Safety Tech. My name is Patty Murray with Food Safety Tech, and we're excited to kick off the first event in this series, SQF in the Age of FSMA, with special guest speaker Robert Garfield, Senior Vice President of the Safe Quality Food Institute. Food Safety Tech is very proud to be the media sponsor of this important series, for which we have more than 1,400 registrants. We have a lot of very valuable information coming your way today, so we're going to get right to it. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce you to your moderator for today's webinar, Barbara Levin, Senior Vice President and co-founder of SafetyChain Software. Barbara?
Thank you very much, Patty. And again, welcome everyone to the kickoff of our 2015 GFSI Leadership Series. We're going to jump right in, but before we do, let me give you all just a few important housekeeping announcements. We are being hosted for this event today on the WebEx platform. Should you have any technical issues and you're still online, you can go out of full screen and send a question to the host, or you can call WebEx technical support directly at 877-509-3239. For those of you who are listening onto the audio only, let me repeat that number, 877-509-3239. A copy of the slides and a link to the recording will be sent to all registrants by close of business Tuesday. You'll receive that in an email from SafetyChain. For your privacy, you can view the names of the host and panelists only, as well as your name. You cannot see the names of the other attendees. After we start with our interview with Bob Garfield, we will be taking questions. You'll be able to submit your questions online, and we'll show you how to do that when we get to that portion of our agenda. Before we get to our agenda, I would like to give a very special thanks to Food Safety Tech for being our media sponsor. As you heard from Patty, we've got 1,400 and counting registrants. This is obviously a very timely topic, and we're very excited to be able to present this to you with Food Safety Tech. We've got a really great agenda for you for today's SQF in the Age of FSMA presentation. And we're going to start out with how does SQF certification prepare a company for FSMA compliance, and we're going to break this down into a couple of areas, including supplier controls, migrating from HACCP to HARP, being audit ready all the time, as well as some other relevant areas. We're going to discuss SQF scheme changes that have been made or are planned to better align with FSMA, gaps in FSMA that are actually filled by SQF, what you should be doing now to prepare for day one FSMA compliance, whether you are or are planning to be SQF certified. We'll then give you some more info from the sponsors and take your questions. And then, of course, everybody is invited to stay for an optional quick demo of SafetyChain for GFSI and FSMA compliance after the event. With that, we're very, very excited to welcome Bob Garfield. Bob is the Senior Vice President of the Safe Quality Food Institute. Bob was with us for our 2014 GFSI series, and we're very excited that he has been able to join us for SQF in the Age of FSMA. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Barbara, and welcome from the ever-changing world of Washington, D.C.
I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about that today. And with that, why don't we just jump into our first question? So Bob, let's just start with how does SQF certification prepare a company for FSMA compliance? I know that we're going to break this down into several areas, but kind of big picture in general, maybe you can kind of kick us off with your insights there.
Well, let me start off by saying I think the audience needs to know where we've come from and the context of FSMA and where it's brought us to today. And I've talked about this a number of times in sessions about the fact that, 20 years ago when I was addressing a board of directors in the food industry, and I suggested to them that there needed to be changes in food regulations, it wouldn't have gone over very well. But over the period of time, things have changed for the corner suite, as it's called, and that many CEOs and presidents of corporations understand that with the media today and the way that FDA has really improved its ability to focus in on contamination, that something needed to happen. And so a number of years ago, I was able to be a part of a session up on Capitol Hill where members of the Senate and the community of trade associations representing all kinds of food trade associations, consumer groups, all were saying in unison that there needed to be changes in food safety regulation. And as a result of that today, it's not everything that we wanted, and it's not certainly everything is the way we would have wanted, but it is a rule that brings the regulations up to where they need to be in this century. So with that, I will tell you that SQF has been at the development of food safety management systems for 13 years. We were one of the original GFSI programs, and our mantra is continuous improvement of our program. And we've done that over the years, sometimes changing our code on a yearly basis to meet new requirements and things we're learning from stakeholders. And that goes with what we've found out prior to FSMA and what's going on now that the final rules for preventive controls have been established. And as you see in this slide, that Dr. David Atchison, who's former FDA Deputy Administrator or Deputy Secretary for Food Safety, his look at our code versus preventive controls, his assumption and his analysis showed that we were very, very much well prepared for the Food Safety Modernization Act preventive control rules, and that companies that established that would definitely have a leg up on being available and ready when the final rules come about.
Great, thank you. And as we discussed, that a lot of the language is there, and it won't be a foreign language. And you know, if companies are doing SQF, they're probably pretty far to where they need to be. Let's maybe look at some breakdowns here. So, you know, one of the foundations for FSMA is supplier controls. So, how does SQF certification prepare a company for FSMA in terms of alignment with supplier controls?
Well, let me just address something you said there that I thought was very important. If anybody wants to download the final preventive control rule, you're going to have to deal with about 600 plus pages of regulations. And when you look at the SQF program, you're usually dealing with two modules, the module 2, which is the general requirements, and then the specific module for the category you're in, and you're dealing with a code that's maybe 40 or 50 pages at max. And so what it does, it narrows it down to exactly what is needed without all the regulatory language that surrounds it. So what you have, you know, some people have a choice. You could take and download that 600 pages and try and go through it and have a yellow liner and try and yellow line what's needed, or you can actually look at our code and see that there is the requirements that are needed. And in fact, when Dr. Atchison went through it, he found of the 95 different areas that are included in the proposed rule that 65 of those were comparable between SQF and the preventive control rule. There was actually about 23 where the requirements for SQF certification were above what was required in FSMA. and there were about 7 that were different. And those differences probably are predicated from the fact that SQF is an international code. It's not an FDA code. So some of those things were more international. But it really does prepare you to be aligned with supplier controls. It gives you all the document necessary, the approved the supplier vendor program in place, audit programs, the testing requirements, all the things, allergen management, that you will need to evaluate your suppliers and keep a good track and manage the supplier base that you have.
And, you know, one of the things that certainly we hear a lot on FSMA Fridays is concern about the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. And that's another area of alignment, because SQF requires third-party audits today for high-risk products. Isn't that the case? And that will help with alignment?
Well, yes. You know, there are the requirements there are significant requirements for high-risk foods, environmental monitoring for one. But yeah, it prepares you well for the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. The one big difference is in the high-risk foods that are part of the Foreign Supplier Verification Program, there is this requirement for a regulatory audit if it's a high-risk food. So that is unclear as of yet where that will come out in the final rule that will probably come out in October, I guess, for the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. But that is a separate issue that we still have not seen the final rule on, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in October when that comes out, to see what FDA does as far as having the specific regulatory requirements and regulatory audits for foreign suppliers of high-risk foods that are not comparable to what's being done in the United States for high-risk foods. It's an interesting conundrum for FDA, and I'm going to be interested to see how they address it when the final rule does come out.
Great, thank you. Building a food safety plan, right, this is an area of concern. So when it comes to alignment of SQF with FSMA food safety plan, including, you know, front of mind like HACCP to HARP migration, how does SQF certification prepare a company for having a FSMA compliant food safety plan?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've been at this for 13 years, modifying, refining, extending, continuously improving what was required for developing your food safety plan. And we've even worked with FDA in part. You know, they've attended some of our training sessions to see how our auditors are trained. We've had sessions with them to talk about how we've developed our program and built our program over the years. And as I mentioned at the beginning, our relationship with Dr. Atchison and how he's looked at the parts of our code that line up with preventive controls, it definitely is matching with what they are requiring under HARP. And I think it puts someone who develops the plan and implements SQF in a very, very good place to be ready for FDA and the HARP requirements when they come to their door.
Now, one of the things that, you know, we've heard a lot is a concern that people have on the FSMA qualified individual, and you mentioned to me that you're doing some work at SQF to hopefully allow the SQF practitioner to be the FSMA QI. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we've also you know, we heard from our stakeholders 2 years ago, and we actually developed and have now a advanced practitioner course, which goes into a lot more than the standard practitioner course. And of course, what we will do is to look what FDA has earmarked for these individuals that they focus on that is basically the same thing as a practitioner. But the qualifications for that, and our technical team will look at those and see where we need to adapt, revise, and implement different areas to improve our practitioners program to meet the qualified individual, specific qualified individual for the FDA Preventive Control Food Safety Plan.
Which will go a long way for a lot of companies who are SQF certified. Now, when you and I
and one thing to mention also is that we have partnered with at least, I don't know the exact number today, but at least 25 different training centers, many of them in the United States, that will offer these programs. So it's not just SQF, but there are a vast number of training centers across the United States and around the world that can offer these training programs to help individual practitioners get up to speed and understand any new requirements that they may need.
Mm-hmm. Great. You know, when you and I were chatting and sort of preparing for this webinar today, you used a term that I haven't heard before that I really liked, and you were talking about elevated HACCP. You know, a lot of people have that question, you know, is HARP-C really, you know, I've heard HACCP in disguise, is HARP-C HACCP on steroids, and you really walked me through it. It shed some light for me on, you know, how SQF looks at HACCP and looking at it differently and how that's really going to align with preventive controls in terms of PRPs. Maybe you can walk our audience through that a little bit.
Well, let me just say that, you know, that we're not a regulation. And SQF has never been designed to be prescriptive. What we are is a management plan. And in my experience, in a number of years in running plants, I did that for 10 years, I understand that each facility, each operation is different and needs to develop and foster its program based on the conditions within that facility, the culture within that facility, and the way the management works and the individuals work within the facility. And so it's great, you know, that it's not only not great, but it's the requirement of FDA to put regulations together which are normally fairly prescriptive. And what we have done is we've taken those regulations and we've taken those ideas and we've made them into more suitable way of going about it, not giving the answers, not giving the prescriptive directives, but saying this is the way it should be. Now take this particular item and move it into your culture and develop it the way that you see fit to meet your commitments and your culture within the organization. This is the way that a food safety management program should work, because as we know, one size does not fit all, and you never can do that. So it's got to be flexible, it's got to be something that's workable for a number of different organizations, individuals, and management that develops their own program that fits their culture. And I think that's the difference there, and that's what we've built on and will continue to build our program on, is that individuality of each facility, each product that's being produced, to develop a program that works for them.
Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. And the foundation there, though, because you really require, and everybody should require, that that PRPs, for example, are verified and validated and that they work as intended, and that's going to really line up with preventive controls very well.
Exactly.
You both have very strong CAPA requirements, correct?
I'm sorry?
I said you both have very strong CAPA requirements, correct, for corrective and preventive action?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So, I mean, but keep in mind, you know, when you're talking about prerequisite programs, when you're talking about CAPA, you know, corrective and preventive controls, you know, these need to be designed with the facility in mind, and they can't be prescriptive. They have to be flexible in order to meet the requirements, so that you have an active and very flexible food safety management program within the organization that everybody can become committed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very good insight there. Thank you for providing us with this chart. This was a chart that that the folks at SQF put together that really kind of compares side by side the requirements of an SQF food safety plan to an FDA food safety plan under FSMA. Perhaps you can kind of walk us a little bit through this chart, Bob?
Well, I think it's self-explanatory, but I'll be happy to do that. You know, we have the SQF practitioner, as we just talked about, and this qualified individual that FDA is talking about, and we will match the two. Like I said, we, a couple of years ago, decided that we needed to add some items to our practitioner and started offering the advanced practitioner. And again, we will go through with our stakeholders to find out if there's anything in the qualified individual that is missing from our program. We'll prepare training, and then we will get that out to our training centers, and they'll be able to offer it across the country and with our training partners to get our practitioners up to speed to where they need to be that qualified individual. The hazard evaluation, and that's pretty much the same. The process controls, you know, again, and the prerequisite programs are fairly similar. Validation and verification is all pretty similar to that. So what you're seeing here is a microcosm of what Dr. Atchison did, which is, by the way, available off of our website under the documents section. In our website, if anybody wants to download the entire document, it goes through all of the 95 or so different areas and compares them. So it is very comparable. What companies need to do, if they're interested, is to take that document where those 95 areas are highlighted and look at their own programs. And if they're SQF certified, and as a matter of fact, I might say we are asking Dr. Atchison to do the same thing with the final preventive control rule. He's in the process of doing that now, and that will be out very soon. It'll be introduced probably at our conference in November. And what companies need to do is to take a look at that comparison and see where they are as far as FDA's requirements and where the SQF code is.
Great. So, you know, being audit ready all the time is a concern to everybody, and SQF has done a lot in the area of audits. How will SQF certification and SQF audit readiness align with FDA and what they're going to be requiring for audit readiness, for record keeping, and the like?
Well, you know, the badge is kind of a past thing. You know, if you look at FDA, I think FDA has understood that they need to collaborate with industry to move forward. They always have the badge in their back pocket, but I think collaboration is the key now with industry to move food safety forward. we introduced unannounced audits with the idea of being audit ready all the time. And it's important to note that SQF came to the conclusion that we need to refocus our attention. This was several years ago. We need to refocus our attention, and the industry needs to refocus its attention on being audit ready all the time and not getting a certificate for the certificate's sake. And in order to do that, we introduced, one thing we did was introduce unannounced audits, which says, you know, you need to be ready all the time for an audit. And that hits to the heart of management commitment and the culture within the organization. And what we've been trying to do, and what we will continue to try to do, is to drive individual companies that implement a SQF food safety management towards that culture which maintains the idea that you need to be committed and ready for audits all the time. And that says to all stakeholders that are involved that that facility has a culture where food safety is the utmost importance, from the CEO all the way down through the entire organization to the folks that are operating equipment, to the people that are running the shop and doing the maintenance on the in the facility, to the QA people, to everyone in the facility. That's how you develop a food safety management program that is second to none, that works all the time. And you know, if nothing else comes from our webinar today, you know, the message I'd like to leave is that's where we need to be as an industry. That's how we will elevate food safety management in the future.
Very, very well said, Bob. Great insight. You know, we've spoken about supplier controls. We've spoken about HACCP and HARP. There are a couple of other areas where SQF certification really prepares a company for FSMA. Perhaps you can comment on some of these other areas.
Yeah, we put environmental monitoring here. You know, we went with version 7.1, and we thought we had made some nice changes in the code to improve it. And the dairy industry contacted some individuals that represented the dairy industry, and they said, well, we like what you did here, but, you know, one thing you haven't done is environmental controls. And so in version 7.22, we said, you know, well, you need to do environmental monitoring for high-risk foods. And, you know, in my days, in 10 years of running plants, I learned this very, very early on as a plant manager in the dairy industry when we had the dairy initiative back in the 90s, and there was a lot of recalls for Listeria monocytogenes, and the fact that we implemented environmental controls at that time to try and control Listeria in the environment of a dairy plant, which is not an easy thing to do. And I think it's critical to have that, and we've come a long way with zones and zone kind of thinking about how to control environmental pathogens. And I think it's necessary to have that in a facility these days, so you're out in front of these kinds of bacteriological and pathogen problems that can result, even in the cleanest plant, of having a significant problem. So environmental monitoring is an important part. I think FSMA decided that they had missed it too, and they added it back into the final rule. And of course, you also have here farm to fork. We are a farm to fork type of solution for processors, growers and processors. We have people that have farms, and then they have pack houses, and they have actual processing of fruits and vegetables. And they run that across the entire gamut. They run the SQF program across the entire gamut. So it's one scheme, which is a solution for the entire gamut of the process, from farm all the way through fork and distribution.
Great, thank you. You know, you mentioned that you're doing some things with training. What changes have been made or are planned for SQF to help it even better align with FSMA?
Well, we have a technical advisory council made up of a cross-section of our stakeholders. There are retailers, manufacturers, there are certification bodies, and others. And actually, Dr. Atchison sits on our Technical Affairs Council as someone with an outside vision of what's needed. And oftentimes, we will listen, as I mentioned, with environmental controls, we listen to our stakeholders. We get a lot of feedback of where we can improve the program. We will continue to do that, not only with preventive controls, but with the other rules that are coming out and finalized, but in the future, because that's what we're, as I mentioned a number of times, that's what we're all about, is continuous improvement. Wherever we can find something that'll help the industry to elevate food safety management, we're all about it. And so in the future, I know that Leanne Chuboff, who's our Senior Technical Director, who will be introducing a number of items to our Technical Advisory Council this fall in Indianapolis during our conference. So we'll have a meeting, and there's a number of areas for improvement of our program that she will introduce at the conference, and she will bring to our Technical Advisory Council for their input. And those will be all part of version 8 of the SQF code that comes out next year.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. You mentioned environmental monitoring before. That was not originally in FSMA and was added later. Are there other gaps in FSMA that are filled by SQF?
Well, I think they mentioned some of the things in here on the slide are mentioned that are part of SQF. And I think, as I mentioned, and it's in the slide actually, there are 25 areas plus in SQF requirements that are above and beyond what are required in FSMA. You have to keep in mind that the SQF code is an international code. We're in 42 countries. And so we take not only what FDA is saying, but we're also listening to other governments and other stakeholders in other countries as to what they need and what their requirements are. And so we're building upon that, again, with the end result to be a program that is the best it can be and elevates food safety management all the time. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's the goal of everyone, is to elevate food safety management.
Great, thank you. So, kind of looking at companies that are already SQF certified or companies that are planning, what should companies be doing today to be FSMA compliant on day one? What are your thoughts here?
Well, I mentioned that we have on our website under the document section the comparison that Dr. Atchison did on the SQF code and preventive controls. That was on the proposal. There is actually, we've added something to yesterday, which is an analysis that was done by Hogan and Lovells. It's in the document section, excuse me, under FDA, the bottom of the document section. It's a 13-page analysis that goes through the changes between the proposal and the new, what's required under the final rule. Gives you a company a good overview of what they've added or changed in the final rule based on what was done in the proposed rule. So I would suggest that all the folks on the phone go to our website, go to the documents section, and download this 13-page document. That's a good place to start by reading that to see where there are changes. By the way, it's all free. You don't have to pay for any of this. I would also download if you haven't done so, even for already certified, but also for those that are planning it, I would download the comparison. For those that are planning it, I would take that document and compare where they think they are now with their different systems within their facility and what is in the SQF code, get a good understanding of that, and then take a look at what's being required of FDA, and then they'll get a good sampling of what they need to do to become FSMA compliant. We're also, as I mentioned, also asking Dr. Atchison to do a comparison on the final rule, and that will be available at our conference. And lastly, I've asked our folks in FMI's government affairs to do a side-by-side comparison between the proposed preventive control rule and the final rule to show what's changed. So it's not a written document, it's actually a side-by-side comparison. I hope to have that on our website by Monday. Anybody that can go to that and take a look at it and see how they differ and what they need to do to be compliant with FSMA.
Great, thank you. What we're going to do now, this has all been really fabulous information. We're going to give you a little bit of additional information from the sponsors, and then we're going to, Bob is going to take your questions. So I've taken us out of full screen right now. Everybody should be able to see on the lower right-hand side of their screen a Q&A tab. Simply enter your questions there and hit send, and we'll get some of those queued up for Bob while I give you a little bit of additional information. As has been mentioned several times, you don't have to do this alone. There is a lot of great information on the SQF site. You can see that website URL there. And we hope to see a lot of you at the SQF conference November 3rd to 5th in Indianapolis. There's also a webcast this coming Monday, September 28th at noon Eastern Time, where you'll be getting a sneak peek at what's new and exciting at the upcoming conference. You can get more information on the conference on the webcast and all of the resources that Bob has mentioned so far about comparisons and all of the other FSMA and SQF resources on these website URLs. And SafetyChain is a very proud sponsor of the SQF conference, and we're very excited and hope to see a lot of you there. We also hope to see a lot of you just a few weeks later in Schaumburg at Food Safety Tech's Food Safety Consortium. This is November 17th through 20th in Schaumburg. You'll be able to meet the GFSI leaders there. There are it's a really, really exciting agenda this year, plenary sessions and case studies on front-of-mind food safety topics. There are workshops and training sessions. SafetyChain is excited. I'll be presenting with Melanie Newman from the Atchison Group on actionable data for FSMA compliance and audit readiness. Attendees and registrants of this webinar can enter the code webinar at the foodsafetyconsortium.org site for a 10% discount on conference registrations, so we hope to see plenty of you there. We also, after the Q&A session, invite you to stay online to see a high-level demo of SafetyChain's software solutions for FSMA and GFSI compliance and audit readiness. We'll be showing you some capabilities in the areas of approved vendor program management, on the ability to manage, monitor, and verify food safety plans, including HACCP and HARP plans. Tell you how we can have you be audit ready all the time, and also the creation of a central repository of all of your food safety and quality data for reporting and for continuous improvement. So we hope that many of you will be able to join us for that post-event session. And with that, Bob, I hope you're ready to answer some questions, because it looks like we've got quite a few of them ready for you here. And good, let's see. Ahmed is asking, if you're passing SQF unannounced audits, it says that you'll be 90% FSMA ready. Is there anything off the top of your head that you can think of that might still be a gap in terms of being ready for FDA?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't gone through the final rule to ensure that, that where there are potential gaps. But I can tell you that in the analysis that Dr. Atchison's going to do in the next month or so, where there is a gap that is found, we will take that to our technical advisory council, and we will try to address it in version 8 of the code, which is due out next year. So, the answer to your question, I expect that there will be some gaps, but with our program and where we're at, we'll fill those gaps. Or if we don't fill them, because again, our code is not just an FDA code. If there's not a possibility, we'll let everyone know where those gaps are, and then you can fill them on your own.
Great, thank you. Nico was asking if you can give some examples of differences between HACCP and HARP. I know. I feel like you're getting the top questions today, Bob.
And unfortunately, if Leanne Chuboff was on here, she'd probably would be able to spout them off. I'm not the technical representative, but in general, HARP is a risk-based approach that is needed to mitigate hazards, whereas HACCP doesn't evaluate the risk-based approach in its process. It's more or less, in my estimation, is just the evolution of HACCP into HARP, applying a risk-based approach to what's being done.
Yes,
Without
I think
examples, I mean, that's basically where I think it's at.
I'll tie that in. Rose is asking what HARP stands for. I'm going to try this, Bob. Let me know if you think it's right. Hazard Analysis Risk-Based Preventive Controls, right?
That's right.
Okay, great. Ruby is asking,
you can look that up on, you can Google that and you'll get plenty of information on HARP.
Absolutely. Let's see. Ruby is asking, when is SQF version 8 coming out?
I would expect it would be sometime in the end of the summer. I hope Leanne is not shaking her head no, but I would expect that we'd see something at the end of the summer, and that it would be implemented probably sometime in 2017, the requirements. So normally we give a 1 year, 6 month to 1 year period for everyone to see what the new requirements are, and then we don't audit till the following year.
Sally is saying, for FSMA, I do not see radiological hazards listed. Will we still be asked to consider this? We discussed this yesterday.
Yeah, I think it was taken out of the final rule, which is smart. I think that, that was more or less a reaction to what happened in Japan. I may, and I think when they looked at the big picture, they decided that this wasn't really something that should be in the final rule, and they took it out.
Maria is saying, our company wants to transition from GMP to SQF certification. Could you comment on what might be the biggest challenges in making this transition?
Well, the biggest challenge I see is that in implementing the SQF program, you have to take the mindset off of complying with good manufacturing practices to one of development of a food safety management system. And that's not just GMPs, that's training, that's record keeping, that's GMPs, that's preventive controls, that's all the things that are necessary to effectively manage food safety within a food processing plant or at a grower, at a pre-farm gate operation. So it is a step forward. It is a big step forward. And I will tell you that individual companies who graduate off historical GMP programs into SQF, it's normally a 6-month to a year-and-a-half period to graduate from a typical GMP program into an SQF program so that you're audit ready.
Okay, great. And here's a question from Anne. Anne is asking, is SQF the GFSI scheme that's most applicable to FSMA? If so, how and why is it better to be SQF certified than other GFSI schemes in terms of FSMA?
Well, let me start off by saying we're the only GFSI scheme that is U.S. based, and we were, as I use the term, bred and brought up in the United States, and so our basic foundation is from U.S. retailers and manufacturers, and so we've been close to that. Along with that, we are also very close to the regulatory establishment in the U.S. I come from a background of government relations and working with FDA, USDA, and up on Capitol Hill for a number of years. SQF is part of the Food Marketing Institute, which has a very large government affairs and food safety division. And so we are well equipped and understand U.S. regulations and requirements. And we are also probably, there are several other things that are unique about SQF. We were the only organization, the only GFSI organization that mandates that each facility have an unannounced audit. And I say that with a little bit of pride, even though that I understand that when we first implemented this, it was pretty hard for a lot of clients to understand why we were doing it, and they had a hard time with it. Actually, we've been seeing that once it was implemented, it's actually quite easy for most of them. Change is sometimes hard, but we felt, as the slide showed before, that facilities need to be audit ready all the time. The fact is that if you're a supplier to a manufacturer and the manufacturer does its own internal audits, they're not going to tell you when they're coming in. FDA is not going to tell you when they're coming in. And in fact, you shouldn't have to prepare for an audit, for an assessment every year. You should be prepared for it. And when a manager, when a CEO understands that their facility is ready for an audit all the time, then I think they can relax a little bit and say, we're audit ready all the time. Our program is in place, and we're doing everything we can on a daily basis to ensure the safety of our products and the safety of our brand. So I think I've given you some reasons why SQF. There are other ones. I will tell you we are the only GFSI scheme that has a full-time full-time customer service representatives. We have 3 of them here and 1 in Australia that are willing and ready to answer questions all the time. So when you call SQF, you're not put on hold, or you're not saying, we'll get back to you next month. Somebody is online, either on the computer or on the telephone, answering your question right away, and if it's something that is above their understanding, then they'll get you to the person that will get an answer for you. That's just one example, one other example of the way SQF has been built with clients in mind.
Great, thank you. Very, very, very insightful. Colleen is asking, Bob, will SQF be satisfied with a HARP plan or program, or will companies have to have both HARP and HACCP to be compliant for both SQF and FSMA?
That's an excellent question. That's something that I'm writing down now that I'll have to take back to our technical people and say, you know, what do you think about that? I can't answer that on the phone right now.
Okay, great. Excuse me. Will SQF certification of an importer meet or exceed the proposed voluntary qualified importer program? I know that final isn't out yet, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you'll go, again, I think you'll go a long way to meeting that. I haven't seen that program. I mean, we haven't seen the final yet. I will tell you that my estimation is there's, I heard it was higher. I heard there was as much as 200,000 registered importers into the United States of food, and FDA, the last time I heard someone speak on this, they said they could possibly do 300 a year.
Wow.
So the idea that this program is going to be available for everyone to get it, every importer to get on to the bandwagon very soon is probably not realistic, unless the fees are such to do it that it allows FDA to expand its resources in order to qualify whether an importer is capable of meeting that program. So, you know, I think you're in good shape if you've done the SQF program. I haven't finals on that, but again, I think the resources available for the agency to really take this program off are limited at this current time.
Thank you so much. We actually have gone a little over our Q&A time. I know that we still have some other questions. We invite everybody. Hopefully we'll see you at the SQF conference and at the Food Safety Consortium so that you can talk to the folks in person and get some of these additional questions answered. Bob, this is really, really very insightful. Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to work with you on these webinars. And with that, we're going to move to the next part of our event today. If you are staying with us for the optional demo of SafetyChain for GFSI and FSMA, just hang on. We're going to start here in just a couple of seconds. If you do have to leave us, thank you so much. We hope you found today's event informative. We hope to see you in Indianapolis at the SQF conference, as well as in Schaumburg at the Food Safety Consortium. And Bob, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay. With that, we're going to go to our optional demo where we're going to show you how technology can help you be compliant and audit readiness with SQF and FSMA. And with that, I'm going to introduce Eric Hansen, SafetyChain's Director of Technical Solutions, who's going to do the demonstration for you. SafetyChain support for FSMA and GFSI compliance and audit readiness is a part of SafetyChain for Food. This is our comprehensive, dedicated platform for food safety and quality assurance at all points along your supply chain, upstream, downstream, and internally, with solutions for supplier compliance, food safety management, food quality management, regulatory and GFSI management and audit readiness, and mobile apps, which operate across the entire platform. What Eric is going to be talking about today is really going to focus on 4 key areas: GFSI vendor approval programs and FSMA supply chain controls, food safety program automation for management, monitoring, and verification, including HACCP and HARP, the creation of a centralized database of food safety and quality assurance data and documents for reporting, trending, and continuous improvement, and how we promote on-demand audit readiness. With that, let's see, Eric, I'm going to make you the presenter. Hi, Eric, we hear you. Let's see, I'm trying to make you the presenter here. You should have the ball now, and you should be able to click anywhere on your screen and page down. I'll come back in just a little bit.
Okie doke, I've got the ball. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Page that way now.
No, you've got to click on your, there you go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Barbara, and thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. As Barbara said, I'm going to go through these different stages of how SafetyChain can help your entire supply chain, entire safety chain, be FSMA and GFSI compliant. We're going to begin with vendor approval programs. So let's jump right in. SafetyChain helps you manage detailed records on all of your vendors, including their approved status. We can track suppliers and vendors in hierarchies, so you can report up from a local facility to a corporate entity and track them individually to determine who is approved and where. Getting into the next slides here, these are the vehicles we use for achieving that approved status and making sure that our suppliers are maintaining their approved status going forward. We have a framework of what we call campaigns and tasks that we push out to supplier portals. So what we're looking at here is it's a new supplier onboarding campaign. You have the ability to tailor these campaigns to the specific requirements of the supplier type or product type, and leveraging this functionality, you can create campaigns specifically to meet the requirements of your foreign supplier verification programs, or your high-risk product suppliers or high-risk suppliers. You can require additional third-party audits or regulatory audits where the products are risky, et cetera, as required by FSMA and GFSI. When this campaign is assembled with the correct collection of tasks, it can be saved off as a template and reused or published en masse to the right population of suppliers. When it is published, they will receive an email with a link to a web portal and some credentials. Upon logging into the web portal, your vendors will have the ability to step through the campaign you pushed to them to complete the supplier questionnaire. We can support a web questionnaire so you can collect tailored information from your suppliers as required by FSMA and GFSI via a web questionnaire. And the great advantage to that is, 1, you can set up required fields, and 2, you can capture that data immediately as data. You don't have to collate through documents or do any document entry, any data entry, and all that data is available for reporting. Then we have additional tasks here where the suppliers can follow a link, have a very familiar browse and upload functionality to provide you with the required third-party audit required FDA registration, HACCP plans, any type of documentation or certification that you need from your supplier. You have the ability on the control side to track which vendors have begun to interact with their campaigns, how are they progressing through them, and ultimately you can review the materials they have provided and review and approve or reject them with comments, and you can build up an audit trail of comments if you're having issues collecting appropriate documentation from your customers. Once that documentation or certification that they have provided is approved, it becomes a managed document that is associated with that particular vendor partner. That's what we're looking at here. This is a list of documentation collected through campaigns, and the fact that these documents are now managed means that we're able to, for example, track expiration dates. A red here is indicating that we have an expired document. Yellow is a document that is expiring within 30 days. In both cases, we trigger notifications that can go internally or to the supplier, and the supplier can be enabled with links to update their own documentation. It follows a very similar pattern then, where you're able to approve or reject the document, and upon approval, it is published as the next version of these documents. This actually becomes an extremely valuable repository of data, because upon receiving multiple iterations of a given document, you're collecting a real valuable history of that vendor's performance. You can open up your details and see how they've performed on their audits through the years, et cetera, and that type of information. We then enable you to take this to the next level by allowing you to facilitate your own audits of your vendor partners in cases where you have high-risk product or high-risk suppliers as required by FSMA. In this case, you can tailor your own audit or use any audit standard that you wish. We'll set them up for you as a mobile form, so you can go on site and conduct the audit. The scoring can be set up as you wish, and you are able to leverage our full corrective action module and functionality and our notification framework. So what we're seeing here is a supplier audit identified a failure. In this case, there's inadequate screening or protection provided for defense against tests, and we have triggered a corrective action. Here, the corrective action remains unresolved, but we know that there's an outstanding action requested, expected of the supplier to come back into compliance, and that whole process is managed within SafetyChain. Now we're looking at the SafetyChain record that is created based on the results of an audit. You can see in green where we have a compliant response, in red where we have a non-compliant response. Here on the left are the elements that the auditor is directed to examine. Here you are able to, with the mobile device, capture a photo, direct visual evidence, and associate it with the record forevermore, so it's there for purposes of auditing and analysis, and we can capture a corrective action. Photos are a very nice way to open and conclude a corrective action in this case, because you can show a precondition and a postcondition. You can associate all kinds of documentation. The idea being here, much like the SQF framework, we offer a very flexible framework for addressing your corrective action process, where you can attach documentation that may be required by your organization to resolve corrective actions. That might be wishbone diagrams, that might be 5 whys. We're not going to impose that process on you, but we will receive that documentation and store it going forward. So that brings us now into, we've approved our vendors. We know we're compliant with the GFSI vendor approval programs, and that gets us over 90% compliant with the FSMA supply chain controls requirements, including the foreign supplier verification programs. We've seen how our campaign structure can be tailored to the specific needs of the specific compliance requirements of the specific supplier population. Now we're receiving goods from these suppliers and processing them, so that takes us into the automation of our own internal program. Here we show how you can define the activity that is required under a HACCP or going forward a HARP-C plan. In this case, I'm saying that when I begin to bag a ready-to-eat vegetable and salad blend package under my HACCP program, I have two CCPs that are required. I can create tasks for these CCPs. One is I'm checking the sanitation level of the recirculated wash water, and the other is I am checking to verify that my metal detectors are functioning as required. These tasks are assigned to a specific group that will conduct the check, and they are assigned at a specific frequency. So when I am in my vegetable and salad blend ready-to-eat bagging operation, every hour I'm going to launch a SaniCheck, SaniCheck of the recirculated wash water to my in-process inspection group, and every 30 minutes I'm going to launch a metal detector check. Those will go out to the people on the floor to be pushed out as a task on the mobile device. The task on the mobile device will walk them through with language directly from the HACCP plan exactly how they need to conduct the check, exactly how they need to evaluate the results, and in the event of a failure, what the acceptable corrective actions are, or what the acceptable corrections are to begin the corrective action process. This is all per the GFSI SQF requirements and compliant with Bismuth requirements. These forms can be quite flexible, so as we evolve from HACCP into HARP-C, and we're checking not only our CCPs, but we're doing additional monitoring and verification on our preventive control programs, such as the sanitation, environmental monitoring, calibration, we can support those by creating forms to support those tasks as well. Again, any form we create is supported by our corrective action process and our notification framework. Here we see a notification now. We had a failed CCP1 check. The sanitation level of the recirculated wash water was too high. The line has been stopped. The issue is still outstanding. We need somebody to go verify that we're back in compliance so we can restart the line. As all of that activity is transpired, we collect it into a single record. That is what we're seeing here. This is the record that's generated in SafetyChain. We're looking at a single instance now. This is very useful for verification purposes and root cause analysis, and for making sure that you've resolved any open corrective action. But this data over time is collected and becomes a very valuable repository for analysis and business intelligence, and that takes us into our next bullet. We become, as we're managing all of that, all of those transactions for your prerequisite programs, your preventive controls, your HACCP program, and your supplier management, we've become a very, very valuable repository of data. So let's look at some of the uses here. What we're looking at here is the homepage dashboard, and this is built off of the actual activity that is transpiring over the system. These dashboards are highly configurable, but this is a pretty typical layout where it conforms nicely to the original product diagram shown by Barbara and the bulleted list of our activity here. We're looking at the left. We're looking at how our suppliers are complying with our relationship requirements. And below here, we're looking at how our suppliers are complying in terms of the tested quality and safety attributes of their product. Here in the central section, we're looking at how we're performing according to our own, we're looking at a very transactional level of how we're performing according to our own requirements. These are things that I need to address right now. I can see that in the previous 7 days, I have generated 5 unresolved corrective actions. I have 7 resolved corrective actions. I can follow the link to see details on both. I have detail on the unresolved corrective actions presented to me right here in the dashboard. I can follow this link to go to the screen like we saw before, where I can interact with the corrective action and get the issue resolved. here on the right, we're tracking my own performance against our program. I'm 85% compliant with our HACCP program. This could, when HARPC comes along, we will implement our HARPC requirements, and you'll be able to track your performance against HARPC. All of that is supported by the framework that exists today. So this is how you manage and control and stay on top of transactional level activity to make sure that any non-compliances are addressed, any corrective actions are resolved. But you can also pull out any data on an ad hoc basis for your own purposes of analysis or verification. If, for example, the auditor comes and says they want to see all of the records of your CCP thermometer calibration, it's very easy to do that once those calibration tasks are managed over our platform. You can extract your CCP calibration information. We roll this information up now with some additional context in our GFSI module to support on-demand audit readiness. So critical now in this world where you have SQF unannounced audits and soon FDA unannounced audits. So what we're looking at here is our GFSI module. We're showing the SQF code. This particular, this is the clause 2.4.3 that says you need a food safety plan that's based on HACCP principles and you need sufficient record keeping. We allow you to associate your HACCP plan document, upload it up into our web, store it in the cloud, and associate it with this clause, so that both for your own internal purposes of organizations, you can pull up the document and make sure it's meeting the specifications of this clause, and that you always have it there for when the auditor shows up. You can pull it up and review with the auditor to make sure you're meeting all of the clauses. We take the next step on this screen where we allow you to configure verification reports so that you can show the auditor, or you can satisfy yourself that not only do you have a good plan in place, but you're actually executing against that plan. You can configure reports here that allow you to pull record data and verify that you are doing exactly what your plan says you will do. This is where the rubber really hits the road. I don't know how many of you were able to attend the FSMA Friday session immediately before this. I know that's a lot of webinar for a Friday, but it was an excellent session led by Dr. David Atchison and Rolando Gonzalez. And they emphasized over and over again that as we're looking at the emergence of these FSMA requirements in the new FSMA regime, the thing you really need to be asking yourself at this stage is when the auditor shows up unannounced at your facility and wants to see your food safety plan, what are you going to show them? This is a great framework here for rationalizing your operation and summarizing it in a single screen where you can pull up the food safety plan and pull up the verifying data. And as you need to flesh out your plan to accommodate additional HARPC requirements, it's quite easy to add verification reports here to capture your CCP thermometer calibration events, your environmental monitoring programs or other sanitation programs. Very easy to add these verification reports to this screen to accommodate those changing requirements. And in fact, leverage the entire framework to make sure that you are executing to meet those changing requirements. So I hope I conveyed that the SafetyChain solution encompasses the full scope of your food safety and quality assurance operations, and as such really covers everything from the GFSI vendor approval program to FSMA supply chain controls, including your foreign supplier verification program, through your HACCP and HARPC food safety program automation. We capture all of the information that flows across those programs in a central database, and then we leverage that database along with your managed documents to display to an auditor or to satisfy yourself that you are always audit ready on demand, meeting all of the requirements of these, this frankly changing regulatory environment.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Yep.
You can give the ball back to me here for a moment. I'll just provide our audience with just a couple of additional pieces of information there Friday. SafetyChain for food, as we said earlier, is a comprehensive solution. We call the solution Food Safety Chain Management. It's really designed to be that safety chain to make sure that your safety and quality programs and compliance requirements are being met at all points along your supply chain. This is a cloud-based solution powered by mobile applications, which really provides for anywhere, anytime FSQA, whether you're in the field doing a pre-harvest inspection, doing a CCP check on the plant floor, or meeting with your auditors or regulators. The solution typically provides hard dollar ROI within months of deployment, making it easy to build a business case for technology investment. SafetyChain provides full service deployment and maintenance for your solutions, and SafetyChain for food is used by leading companies across the food and beverage industry, including suppliers and growers, manufacturers and processors, food service and food retail companies. Again, the slides and recording links to both sessions today, our SQF and the Age of FSMA, as well as the demo, will be sent out early next week. There's a lot of resources on the role of food safety technology in helping companies meet their food safety objectives on our website at SafetyChain.com. If you'd like a more in-depth private demonstration based on your requirements, more info on the solutions, help doing an ROI calculation. We've got a very in-depth ROI calculator tool, or any other information. There's a form you can fill out when you leave today's session, and you can also send us an email to info@safetychain.com. With that, I'd like to thank everybody who's joined us today. Again, thank our fabulous speaker, Bob Garfield, and our own Eric Hansen, and everybody have a fabulous rest of your Friday and a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.